I never believed in monsters, not the kind that hide in closets or under beds. I believed in the human variety, the ones who walk among us wearing ordinary faces. At 32, with a dead-end job as a night security guard at Harmon Tower, I had seen enough of those. My name is Jake Mercer. Before that rainy October night, my life had been painfully ordinary. A cramped studio apartment, microwave dinners, and solitary walks home through a city that never seemed to notice me. I preferred it that way. Invisibility was comfortable. The rain had been falling for 3 days straight, turning the city into a glistening maze of reflections. I was trudging home from my shift, collar up against the downpour, when I heard it. A cry that didn't belong among the urban sounds of distant sirens and rumbling traffic. A cry that made my skin prickle. I hesitated at the mouth of Brennan Alley, a narrow passage between two forgotten brick buildings. The sensible part of me, the part that had kept me alive in this city for 15 years, told me to keep walking. But something else, something I couldn't name, pulled me forward. The alley narrowed, the neon glow from the main street fading behind me. Ahead, a single street lamp flickered, illuminating a scene that would forever divide my life into before and after. A woman was slumped against the brick wall, one hand pressed to her side where dark blood seeped between her fingers, mixing with rainwater on the pavement. She wasn't dressed for the weather, just jeans and a light jacket, now torn and soaked through. Her blonde hair clung to her pale face, but her eyes, they burned with an intensity that stopped me in my tracks. She ignored my question. "Come here," she whispered. Though it didn't sound like a plea, it sounded like a command. I moved toward her, fumbling for my phone. "I'll call an ambulance." "No." The force in her voice made me freeze. "No ambulance. No police." "But you're bleeding." "It'll heal." She grimaced, shifting her weight. "They can't help with this." Before I could argue, she grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. Her hand was ice cold and slick with rain and blood. "Listen carefully," she said, her voice steadying. "I don't have much time. They're coming." "Who's coming?" I asked, glancing nervously toward the mouth of the alley. She ignored my question. Instead, she pressed something into my palm, something cold and metallic. "Take this. Keep it hidden. Keep it safe." I looked down at a tarnished silver medallion, roughly the size of a poker chip. Strange symbols were etched into its surface, symbols that seemed to shift and change as I stared at them. "What is this?" I asked. "What am I supposed to—" A low growl echoed from the far end of the alley, a sound no human throat could make. The woman's eyes widened. "Run!" she hissed. "Now!" The raw fear in her voice triggered something primal in me. I backed away, the medallion clutched in my fist. "I can't just leave you here," I protested, though my body was already turning toward the street. "You must," she insisted. "I can handle myself. The medallion can't. Go." The growl came again, closer this time, accompanied by a scraping sound like claws on concrete. I caught a glimpse of movement in the shadows beyond the woman, something large and misshapen. Shame burns in my throat as I admit this. I ran. I ran as if death itself were at my heels. The medallion clutched in my hand. I fled into the rainy night, the woman's final words echoing in my mind. It wasn't until I reached the relative safety of my apartment, door locked and chain fastened, that I realized I hadn't even asked her name. Dawn found me huddled in my armchair, staring at the medallion as if it might suddenly speak and explain the madness of the previous night. I hadn't slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the woman in the alley, blood seeping between her fingers, and heard that inhuman growl from the shadows. My apartment looked exactly as I'd left it. Unwashed coffee mug on the counter, yesterday's clothes draped over the back of a chair, blinds half drawn against the city's perpetual glow. But something had changed. I had changed. The medallion lay heavy in my palm. In the gray morning light, it looked unremarkable, tarnished silver with intricate engravings that no longer seemed to shift and move as they had in the rain-slicked darkness of the alley. It was attached to a thin silver chain broken at the clasp. I ran my thumb over its surface, tracing the strange symbols. They reminded me of ancient runes I'd seen in books, but not quite. These were more fluid, more organic, as if they'd grown rather than been carved. The phone rang, startling me so badly I nearly dropped the medallion. It was my supervisor at Harmon Tower. "Mercer, where the hell are you? Your shift started an hour ago." I glanced at the clock, 8 a.m. I was supposed to be at my desk in the lobby, checking IDs and watching surveillance feeds. "Sorry, Dave, I'm sick. Food poisoning, I think." The lie came easily. Dave sighed. "Fine. I'll get Rodriguez to cover. Get better fast, Mercer. We're short-staffed as it is." After hanging up, I continued studying the medallion. The woman had said to keep it hidden, to keep it safe. From what? From whom? The thing in the alley? I tried to convince myself that what I'd heard and glimpsed had been nothing more than a stray dog, that the woman was just some junkie who'd gotten herself hurt. But I knew better. The terror I'd felt in that moment had been too primal, too visceral. I should turn the medallion in to the police, I thought. Report finding an injured woman. Let the professionals handle it. But every time I reached for my phone, I remembered her words. No police. By midday, restlessness drove me out of the apartment. I slipped the medallion into my pocket, its weight a constant reminder of my cowardice. I had abandoned her, left her bleeding and vulnerable to whatever lurked in the shadows. The guilt gnawed at me as I wandered aimlessly through the busy streets. Rain had given way to weak sunshine, but the city felt different now. Each shadow potentially concealing something monstrous, each passerby a possible threat. As evening approached, I found myself drawn to the alley again, both dreading and hoping to find some trace of the woman. But Brennan Alley looked utterly ordinary in the fading light. No police tape, no bloodstains on the pavement, no sign that anything unusual had happened there. It was as if she had never existed. I was turning to leave when something caught my eye. A small splash of dark red on the brick wall, at about the height where she had been slumped. Blood. Her blood. Proof that I hadn't imagined the whole thing. As I stared at that small, damning stain, the medallion in my pocket suddenly grew warm. Not gradually, but instantly, as if someone had flipped a switch. I pulled it out, wincing at the heat against my skin. The symbols were moving again, flowing like liquid silver across the surface, and they were glowing with a faint blue light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with my heartbeat. A warning. I turned, scanning the deepening shadows of the alley. Nothing moved, but the feeling of being watched crawled across my skin like insects. Get out, now. I didn't wait to see what had triggered the medallion's reaction. This time, my flight wasn't fueled by cowardice, but by a certainty that whatever had attacked the woman was now hunting me. 3 days passed. I returned to work, going through the motions of normal life while feeling anything but normal. The medallion never left my possession. At home, I kept it on my nightstand, and during my shifts at Harmon Tower, it rested in my pocket, a constant, inexplicable presence. Sometimes it grew warm, pulsing with that strange blue glow when I passed certain places or people. I began to trust these warnings, altering my routes home, avoiding the spots that triggered the medallion's activity. Sleep became elusive. When I did manage to drift off, my dreams were filled with shadows that moved against the current of darkness, with claws that scraped and eyes that burned. And always, at the center of these nightmares, stood the woman from the alley, her hand outstretched, offering the medallion as if it were both salvation and damnation. Why me? I would ask in these dreams. But she never answered. On the fourth day, I noticed someone watching me during my shift. A man in a charcoal suit, standing in the lobby of Harmon Tower for nearly an hour without approaching the reception desk or the elevators. Just standing, watching, with eyes that never seemed to blink. When I finally gathered the courage to approach him, he smiled. A smile that was technically perfect but emotionally vacant, and walked out of the building. The medallion in my pocket grew so hot it nearly burned through the fabric. That night on my way home, I took a longer route, avoiding the main streets. Paranoia had become my constant companion. But it wasn't paranoia if something really was hunting you, was it? As I cut through a small park, the medallion suddenly flared with heat and light. I stopped, heart hammering, and scanned the darkness. The park should have been empty at this hour, but there, beneath a gnarled oak tree, stood a figure. Not the man from the tower. A woman, slender, with short black hair that caught the moonlight. She was watching me intently, head slightly tilted as if listening to a distant sound. For a moment, I thought it might be her, the woman from the alley. But no, this woman was different. Younger, with an air of detached curiosity rather than urgent desperation. She raised a hand in greeting, or warning. I couldn't tell which. The medallion pulsed once, violently, and then grew cold. Confused by this new reaction, I hesitated. The woman smiled, and even from a distance, I could see there was something wrong with that smile, something predatory in the way her lips curved. "Hello, bearer," she called, her voice carrying clearly across the empty park. "I believe you have something that belongs to a friend of mine." I backed away, one hand clutching the medallion through my jacket. "I don't know what you're talking about." She laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "Oh, I think you do. The question is whether you'll give it to me willingly, or whether I'll have to take it from your cooling corpse." The casual cruelty of her words froze me in place. This was insane. People didn't talk like that. People didn't threaten strangers in parks over mysterious medallions. But then, people didn't growl like beasts in dark alleys either. "Who are you?" I managed to ask. "What do you want?" "Ooh." She started walking toward me, each step measured and graceful. "My name is Elise, and I want the seal of shadows that you're clutching so pathetically. The trinket doesn't belong to you. It doesn't even belong to the woman who gave it to you. It belongs to my kind." The seal of shadows. At least the damn thing had a name. "Your kind?" I repeated, still backing away. Elise's smile widened, revealing teeth that seemed too sharp, too numerous. "We have many names, depending on who's doing the naming. Predator, monster, nightmare." She shrugged. "Labels are so limiting, don't you think?" She was closer now, close enough that I could see her eyes were an unnatural amber color with pupils that weren't quite round. The medallion, the seal, was now vibrating against my palm as if trying to communicate some urgent message. Run, probably, but I'd done enough running. "The woman in the alley," I said. "What did you do to her?" Elise's expression darkened. "Lena has been a thorn in our side for longer than you've been alive, bearer. What happened in that alley was merely the latest skirmish in a very long war. A war your kind isn't even aware of. Lena." At least now I had a name for the woman who had upended my life. "She was hurt," I said, anger rising to compete with my fear. "She was bleeding." "And yet she lives," Elise replied with obvious displeasure. "Thanks in no small part to your timely intervention. She knew we were close to acquiring the seal. Passing it to a random human was unexpected, clever in its way." She was less than 10 feet away now. The air around her seemed to shimmer, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. "Look," I said, trying to sound reasonable, "I don't want any part of whatever this is. Take the medallion, take it and leave me alone." I held out the seal, expecting her to snatch it and disappear into the night. Problem solved. But Elise stopped, her amber eyes narrowing. That's not how this works, bearer. The seal has chosen you now. It's bound to you. The only way to break that bond is through your death. She sighed theatrically. Nothing personal, you understand. Just necessity. As she spoke, her form began to change. It wasn't dramatic, not like the werewolf transformations I'd seen in movies. This was subtler, more disturbing. Her skin seemed to ripple, as if something beneath it was rearranging itself. Her fingers lengthened, the nails extending into curved claws, and her face, her beautiful, terrible face, elongated slightly, becoming something not quite human. I didn't wait to see more. I ran. Behind me, Elisa's laugh cut through the night air. Run, little bearer. It makes the hunt so much more entertaining. I ran as if hell itself were at my heels. Perhaps it was. A week after my encounter with Elise in the park, I was a nervous wreck. I'd called in sick to work 3 days in a row, unable to face the thought of standing in that exposed lobby, an easy target. I barely slept. I ate only what I could grab from the convenience store across the street, never staying out longer than necessary. The seal, I couldn't think of it as just a medallion anymore, had become more active. It pulsed and warmed seemingly at random, though most strongly at night. I'd taken to wearing it around my neck, the broken chain replaced with a leather cord. It felt safer that way, closer to my skin, though I couldn't have explained why. On the 8th day, cabin fever and hunger finally drove me out. I needed coffee, real coffee, not the instant garbage I'd been drinking. And I needed to feel human again, to be around normal people who weren't being hunted by things that hid behind human faces. The Morning Brew Cafe was 6 blocks from my apartment. I'd passed it 100 times but never gone in. Today, it looked like sanctuary, warm light spilling onto the sidewalk, the rich aroma of freshly ground beans, the murmur of ordinary conversation. Inside, it was half full, mostly with students from the community college down the street. I ordered a large black coffee and retreated to a corner table, my back to the wall so I could watch the door. The first sip of coffee was restorative, almost magical in its normalcy. For a moment, I could pretend that my life hadn't become a waking nightmare, that I was just a regular guy, enjoying a regular cup of coffee, with regular problems like bills and job dissatisfaction. The illusion shattered the moment she walked in. I recognized her instantly, though she looked drastically different from the bleeding, desperate woman in the alley. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, revealing high cheekbones and clear gray eyes. She wore a simple blue sweater and jeans, and moved with the easy confidence of someone comfortable in their own skin. No trace remained of her injuries. Lena. She didn't seem surprised to see me. In fact, she walked directly to my table, as if she'd known exactly where to find me. "Hello, Jake," she said, sliding into the seat opposite mine without waiting for an invitation. I stared at her, coffee forgotten. "How do you know my name?" A small smile. "The same way I knew you'd be here today. I've been keeping an eye on you." "That's not creepy at all," I muttered, but my heart wasn't in the sarcasm. I was too relieved to see her alive. "You're okay. I thought, in the alley." A barista approached, and Lena ordered a strawberry milkshake with such casual normalcy that I almost laughed. What kind of monster fighter ordered a strawberry milkshake? When the barista left, I leaned forward. What the hell is going on? What is this thing? I pulled the seal from beneath my shirt, letting it rest on the table between us. Lena's eyes fixed on it with an intensity that was almost physical. The Seal of Shadows, one of 5 ancient artifacts created to bind and control the Umbra. The what now? The Umbra. She glanced around, making sure no one was listening, then continued in a lower voice. They're not from here. Not originally. They came through a rift centuries ago. Creatures of shadow and hunger that learned to wear human skin. I thought of Elise's amber eyes, Her two sharp teeth, the way her skin had rippled as if something else lived beneath it. Like Elise, Lena nodded. Elise is one of their leaders. The Umbra organize themselves into houses, 5 major factions, each with their own territory and agenda. Elise heads House Vermilion. And you? I asked. What are you? Something flickered across her face, caution, perhaps, or old pain. Human, like you, just better informed. There are those of us who know about the Umbra, who fight to keep them contained. A secret society of monster hunters, I said flatly. Of course there is. Lena sipped her milkshake, unperturbed by my skepticism. We call ourselves the Vigilant. We're scattered but connected. And we're the only thing standing between humanity and what lurks in the shadows. I rubbed my temples, feeling the beginning of a headache. And this? I tapped the seal. What does it do? It protects you, for now, Lena said. The seals were created to bind the Umbra to certain rules, certain limitations. They can't directly harm the bearer of a seal, but they can hurt anyone around you. They can make your life a living hell until you give it up willingly or die of seemingly natural causes. Seemingly natural? Lena's expression was grim. Heart attacks, strokes, accidents. The Umbra are patient and creative. Fantastic, I muttered. So I'm marked for death either way. Not necessarily. Lena reached across the table, her fingers brushing against the seal. The fact that it chose you is significant. The seals aren't just objects, they have a kind of awareness. They choose their bearers carefully. I snorted. Well, this one chose poorly. I'm a security guard, not a monster hunter. I ran away and left you bleeding in an alley, remember? And yet you came back, Lena said softly. You went looking for me. You stood your ground with Elise, even when you saw what she truly was. I ran from her too. A tactical retreat, Lena corrected with a small smile. That's not cowardice, that's survival. The barista returned with a coffee refill I hadn't asked for, giving us a curious look before moving on to other tables. So what now? I asked when we were alone again. What am I supposed to do with this thing, with this knowledge? Lena leaned back, studying me thoughtfully. That depends on you, Jake Mercer. You could try to run, find someplace remote where the Umbra might not follow immediately. You could turn the seal over to me, and I would do my best to protect you from the consequences. Or, I prompted when she didn't continue. Or you could join us. The Vigilant, learn to fight back. The seal chose you for a reason. Maybe it's time to find out why. The offer hung between us, impossible and terrifying. I'm not a fighter, I said finally. I've never even been in a real fight. Lena's smile held a hint of sadness. Neither was I. Once. We all start somewhere, Jake. She stood, placing a napkin beside my coffee cup. On it, she'd written a phone number and an address. Think about it, she said. The full moon is in 3 days. The seal's power wanes during that time. You'll be vulnerable. If you want my help, come to this address before sundown on the full moon. If not, she shrugged. I'll understand. As she turned to leave, I called after her. Why did you give it to me? In the alley. Why me? Lena paused, looking back over her shoulder. I didn't choose you, Jake. The seal did. I just facilitated the introduction. With that cryptic answer, she was gone, leaving me with a cold coffee, a mystical artifact, and a decision that would change my life forever if I lived long enough to make it. I didn't go to work the next day or the day after. Dave from Harmon Tower left increasingly annoyed voicemails, but I couldn't bring myself to care. What was a job compared to the revelation that monsters were real and one of them wanted me dead? I spent those days researching, if you could call desperate Googling research. I searched for terms like Umbra creatures, Seal of Shadows, and the Vigilant Monster Hunters. The results were a useless mix of role-playing game references, New Age spirituality sites, and conspiracy theory forums. On one of those forums, buried deep in a thread about shadow people, I found a single post that made my blood run cold. They wear human faces. They live among us. The only way to spot them is their eyes, amber or violet, with pupils that change shape when they're angry or hungry. If you see one, run, do not engage. They can smell fear and they feed on it before they feed on you. The post was 5 years old. The username was Vigil Keeper. There were no replies. By the evening of the second day, I had made my decision. I wasn't cut out for this. I would give the seal to Lena and beg for her protection until the Umbra lost interest in me. Maybe I could relocate, change my name, start fresh somewhere else. I was packing a bag, not sure where I would go, but certain I needed to be ready to run, when someone knocked on my apartment door. No one ever knocked on my door. I didn't have friends who visited. Deliveries went to the building's package room, and the superintendent always texted before coming by. I froze, one hand clutching a balled-up pair of socks, the other automatically reaching for the seal around my neck. It was cold, neither warning me of danger nor reassuring me of safety. The knock came again, more insistent this time. Moving silently to the door, I peered through the peephole. A woman stood in the hallway, middle-aged, with graying blonde hair and the harried look of someone who spent too much time worrying. She wore a postal worker's uniform. "Package delivery," she called through the door. "Need a signature." I hesitated. There was something off about this scenario, but I couldn't place what. The seal remained stubbornly neutral against my chest. "I didn't order anything," I said through the door. "It's from The woman checked a slip of paper. "Lena Morgan? Says it's urgent." Lena, that decided it. I unlocked the door but left the security chain engaged, opening it just enough to see the woman more clearly. Her eyes were normal, brown and tired looking. No sign of the unnatural amber or violet the forum post had warned about. She held out a small package wrapped in brown paper and a signature pad. "Just sign here, hun," she said, gesturing with the pad. Something still felt wrong. "Can you leave it outside the door? I'm not dressed." A lie, but it bought me time to think. The woman's expression flickered with annoyance. "Policy says I need a signature. Won't take but a second." As she spoke, I noticed her uniform, just slightly off in ways I couldn't immediately identify. The patch was on the wrong side, the blue was a shade too dark, and the seal, previously neutral, suddenly blazed with heat against my skin. I slammed the door shut as the woman's face contorted, not in anger, but in a physical transformation that no human face should be capable of. The door shuddered as something heavy slammed against it. "Open the door, bearer," the thing outside snarled, its voice no longer that of a middle-aged postal worker, but a guttural, multi-toned growl. "The charade is over. Give us the seal and your death will be quick." I backed away, heart hammering. The door shuddered again, the security chain straining against the force of the blows. It wouldn't hold for long. Panicking, I grabbed my half-packed bag and looked around for an escape route. The apartment was on the 3rd floor, too high to jump from the window. The fire escape was accessed through the bedroom, but I'd have to pass by the front door to reach it. Another blow, and the door frame splintered around the chain. The seal burned against my chest, its blue glow now visible even through my shirt. Acting on instinct, I grasped it tightly and held it toward the failing door. "Get back!" I shouted, with more confidence than I felt. "The seal protects me. You can't hurt me." The pounding stopped. For a moment, silence stretched, broken only by my ragged breathing. Then, a laugh, low and malevolent. "True. I cannot harm you directly, bearer, but I can harm everything around you." A horrid smell filled the apartment. Gas. I heard a loud hissing from the kitchen. The bastard was breaking the gas line from the hallway somehow. No time to think. I ran for the bedroom, grabbed my phone, and scrambled onto the fire escape just as the first tendrils of gas reached the bedroom. Behind me, the front door finally gave way with a splintering crash. I heard heavy footsteps entering my apartment, followed by a sound like sniffing. "Run, little bearer," the creature called. "The hunt continues." I was already moving, clattering down the metal stairs of the fire escape, the seal clutched in one hand, my phone in the other. As soon as I was far enough down, I dialed Lena's number from the cafe napkin. She answered on the first ring. "Jake? What's happening?" "One of them found me," I gasped, still descending. "At my apartment, disguised as a postal worker. It broke in. I think it's gonna blow up the building. Gas leak." "Where are you now?" Her voice was calm, focused. "Fire escape. Almost to the ground. Get to the address I gave you. Don't stop. Don't talk to anyone. I'll meet you there." I hit the ground running, not looking back at my apartment building. I didn't need to. The sound of the explosion told me everything. A dull whump followed by shattering glass and screaming. People would die. Because of me. Because I had tried to run instead of facing what was coming. As if reading my thoughts, Lena's voice came through the phone. "This isn't your fault, Jake. It's theirs. Remember that. Now run." I ran. The address Lena had given me led to a nondescript brick building in one of the city's older industrial districts. Most of the surrounding warehouses had been converted into trendy lofts or artisanal breweries, but this particular building remained stubbornly unchanged. No signage, no renovations, just metal security shutters over the windows and a heavy steel door. By the time I arrived, night was falling. The explosion at my apartment building was probably all over the local news. I wondered if they would think I had died in it. Perhaps that was for the best. I approached the door, finding no buzzer or intercom, just a small metal panel beside the frame with what looked like a card reader. I was raising my hand to knock when the door swung open. I stood in the entrance as Lena stepped aside, her expression grim, letting me in. The interior was dimly lit, filled with repurposed industrial equipment. A single hanging light cast sharp shadows across the concrete walls. "You ran fast," Lena noted. "Good, you'll need that." I swallowed. "My apartment is gone," Lena finished. "They don't leave loose ends." My stomach tightened. How do I stop this? I'm not a fighter. I'm not... "You don't have to be," Lena said, pulling her sword from a rack on the wall. It gleamed under the dim light, unnaturally sharp. "You just have to survive." The blade sliced through the air, and with a single motion, iron spikes erupted from the concrete floor. I stumbled back, my breath catching. "They'll come for you again," Lena continued, flicking the sword in a slow, deliberate motion. The spikes retracted as if they'd never been there. "But this time, we make sure they don't get the chance." I exhaled sharply. "And if I give them the seal, they'll kill you anyway," Lena said. "And then they'll kill everyone around you for sport." I looked down at the medallion. It pulsed, a slow heartbeat in my palm. I had wanted to escape, to hand off this nightmare to someone else, but it was too late. I was in it now. "All right," I said. "What's the plan?" We made our stand in the skeletal remains of an abandoned train depot. Lena had chosen it for a reason. Open spaces, steel everywhere, no shadows deep enough for the Umbra to hide. The air turned cold. Shadows stretched unnaturally, writhing like living things. Then they came. Elise stepped forward first, her presence warping the air. She no longer pretended to be human. Her amber eyes gleamed like molten gold, and her smile was a predator's, a thing that had played with its food for centuries. She wasn't alone. Behind her, two figures emerged from the dark, shifting like liquid. Their bodies flickered between human and something else, something elongated, with too many joints, too many teeth. Their fingers were too long, tapering into talons. Their eyes were lidless, burning violet. My breath hitched. These weren't just monsters. They were nightmares made flesh. Elise tilted her head as if sniffing the air. "Still running, little bearer?" she purred. "Tiring, isn't it?" Lena raised her sword. "Come closer. See how tired I am." The first Umbra lunged. Lena was a blur. She met it mid-leap, blade flashing. The moment the sword cut air, iron spikes erupted from the depot floor, impaling the creature through its midsection. It screeched, a horrific, layered sound, and writhed against the steel. But it didn't die. Its body twisted, folding itself unnaturally to slip free of the spikes. Before it could strike again, Lena brought her sword down in a merciless arc, severing its head. Its body convulsed violently, then melted into black mist. I barely had time to register what happened before the second one was on me. I dove aside just in time. The creature's claws shredded the ground where I'd been standing, gouging deep scars into solid steel. I scrambled back, gripping the seal. It pulsed against my palm, the symbol shifting. I had no idea how to use it. Lena's voice cut through the chaos. "Focus, Jake." Elise moved now, fast as a bullet. She was on Lena in an instant, striking with inhuman strength. Their swords clashed, sending sparks flying. "You always were stubborn," Elise taunted, her claws raking across Lena's shoulder. "But you're alone now. No sisters left to fight with you." Lena snarled, ignoring the pain. "Neither are you." She twisted her sword, and the steel beneath Elise exploded in a hail of iron spikes. Elise leapt back, landing with unnatural grace. "Not bad," she admitted, "but I've adapted, Lena." She reached into the shadows, literally. Her arm disappeared into the darkness at her feet, and when she pulled it free, she was holding something wickedly curved and serrated. A weapon forged from pure shadow. Lena didn't hesitate. She lunged, her blade striking with practiced precision. Elise met her, and the two clashed in a brutal, lightning-fast exchange, sword against shadow, steel against darkness. I barely had time to react before the remaining Umbra turned on me. It rushed forward, closing the distance in a blink. The seal burned hot in my palm. Instinct took over. I gripped it tight and thrust it forward. A pulse of blue light erupted outward, slamming into the creature like a shockwave. It howled, its form unraveling at the edges, but it wasn't enough to destroy it. It recovered fast, too fast. I braced for the killing blow, and Lena was there. She cut across the creature's torso, severing it in two. Its remains sizzled, dissolving into mist. Only Elise remained now. She stood atop a rusted train car, breathing hard, eyes burning with hatred. Lena flicked blood off her blade. "Last chance to run, Elise." Elise's lips curled into a snarl. "I don't run from prey." She lashed out faster than before. Her shadow weapon expanded mid-swing, morphing into a jagged whip. Lena barely blocked in time. I saw it then, the opening. Elise's focus was on Lena. She wasn't watching me. The seal pulsed in my hand, responding to my intent. I moved, closing the distance.